So being 2 o'clock, I'm going to get started, and I'm sure folks will join us as we get along. So good afternoon. I'm Chris Cooney. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's COVID Resource and Recovery Zoom call, being sponsored in part by Sharon Crescent United Credit Union. The Chamber joins the Boston Chamber and the chambers across the country in denouncing hate and violence against Asian Americans. More than 3,500 violent crimes have been reported against Asian Americans in cities across the United States recently. We all must do what it takes to stop and denounce this destructive force, not only on our country, but our economy. This week, like the last 50, we will hear today from city, state, and regional resources. In addition, we're delighted to have federal resources here as well. This call is being recorded and we posted on the Chamber's COVID recovery website, and that's metrosouthchamber.com. Great collection of videos and information and links with the latest information. While I mentioned that, I'm just going to introduce Teresa Lobo-Albin, who's our accountant, but also is now working with us to provide business assistance to small businesses right here in the area in both English and Portuguese. So hi, Teresa. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
She's going to put her information down below. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to her, please do so, and she'll help you the best she can with various questions related to business resources during this COVID. I want to ask you all to post questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and our panelists will answer them directly as we go along in the program. If your question is for Congressman Bill Keating, please note this, and we will save it for him. The Congressman has recorded remarks and has answered 3 questions we've asked, but he is not going to be with us today. He's promising to come back. He was called into a committee, and he will hopefully be with us on April 9th, which is our next call. But he did record remarks for us this morning, and he also answered 3 questions we asked him relative to business, and he did a nice job. We received the recording a little earlier this hour. I want to thank Susan Whitaker, Margaret LaForest, as well as Eli Spyhu for answering the questions as we go along. Thanks for being with us. I also want to thank our partners who have been promoting these weekly calls. At this point, I would like to introduce the mayor, if he's on. If he's not, he's joining us shortly, and he has another call at 12:15. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right to Sue Joss. Sue Joss was with the governor, I think, yesterday. He spent over an hour in a press conference talking about the facility in Brockton. Sue, can you give us an update on what you are doing at the Shaw Center and how it's going?
Sure, thanks, Chris. So we are vaccinating people who qualify who live or work in Brockton. So what I wanted to do is just share some slides on what the current phase. We have a phase opening this Monday, March 22nd, and I think it's important for everyone to see who's eligible in this phase, because it's a pretty expansive new phase. So I'm going to share my screen, and can you see that, Chris?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So this is the timeline, and one of the really important things the governor did when he was at the Shaw Center is he gave the whole timeline, which in previous rounds we have just gotten the next one, and usually with just a couple days notice. So this is really good for us for planning. So the phase that we are just finishing right now is for people who are over age 65, people who have 2 chronic conditions, and I'll go over what those are. And then last minute addition was school teachers and daycare providers and all school staff. So we're finishing those up right now and doing about 600 or 700 vaccinations a day at the Shaw Center with the help of the National Guard. This is what's opening Monday. So on March 22nd, age 65 now becomes age 60 and over, and certain workers that I'll show you in just a second. April 5th, it drops down to age 55, and it's the same chronic conditions, but now they'll only have to have 1 of them instead of 2. And then the part that we were all waiting to hear is the general public, and Patriots Day, April 19th, will be open to everyone. So that's a pretty aggressive timeline, and we're going to be really busy at the Shaw Center and everywhere else that's vaccinating, but it's pretty exciting to have the timeline laid out. So the groups that are eligible on Monday as essential workers, anyone related to food. So restaurant workers, meat packers, food manufacturers, retail, grocery, convenience stores, food pantry workers, all eligible on Monday. Anyone related to transportation, and this is a really broad list here on transportation. So buses, Ubers, cabs, package delivery workers, all eligible. Public works eligible. And then the last new group, sanitation workers, public health workers, not healthcare workers because they were in phase 1, but other public health workers, anyone in the court system, and anyone working in the funeral industry. So that's a pretty big list in Brockton. We are already reaching out to some of the big companies related to food in particular, but that's a lot of people newly eligible. These are the eligible conditions. These have not changed, but the difference coming up on April 5th is that to be eligible, people only will have to have one of them instead of the 2. So right now, until April 5th, it's 2 of these. And where to go for vaccinations. For people who live or work in Brockton, the Shaw Center is most likely your best bet because we have openings for Monday. We're caught up, we're doing lots of vaccinations, we can get people in quickly. We also, if you could email me if you've got an employer group of 20 or more who want vaccination, we're trying to speed up our booking process by working directly with employers to have them help us schedule. And then last slide is for people who do not live or work in Brockton. There's a number of options. So this is the link to the state vaccination mass sign up site, and you can pre-register now. So even if you're not eligible, you can sign up and they'll contact you when it's your turn. Still don't want to forget about contacting your own primary care provider. The problem is that they are mostly not prioritized right now, so not getting the vaccine they need, but it may be a possibility. And then CVS and Walgreens are both getting direct shipments from the federal government, so they may be options for people as well. So that's all I had, and happy to give more information if anyone has any other questions. Also, I'll watch the chat too during the meeting.
Thank you, Sue, so much for being with us and for all your team is doing there at the Brockton Neighborhood Health Center. More than, I think, 600 employees strong and operating the Shaw Center. It was great to see you with the governor the other day representing Brockton. And of course, the mayor was with the governor most of the day and just doing a wonderful job and bringing those resources to the city. And ultimately, it sounds like that facility is going to go regional at some point and be able to accommodate folks from around the region. So that's great. Mayor, good to have you with us. And I know that you're transitioning between meetings. So you're up next. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Chris. And as always, Sue and her team are just unbelievable collaborators, and good to see Senator Brady and the team here from Metro South, and Margaret and Sue. We've been doing this for God knows how many weeks now, but
50.
How many?
50.
50. All right. So a couple things. We had some wonderful visitors to Brockton, of course. Congressman Stephen Lynch was here the other day. Brockton will be the recipient of almost $36 million. It's $35.6 million under the American Rescue Plan Act. Money's going to be utilized to heal and rebuild the damages of COVID here in the city of Champion. So we'll have the flexibility to utilize that money. The feds have decided that the municipal leaders can use the money in a manner that's best for the municipality. So we're going to be doing a deep dive and see how we can best use that money. And it's really, the goal is to rebuild. Then, as you said, Chris, we had Governor and Lieutenant Governor here and the delegation. And it was a wonderful event. Neighborhood Health Center has partnered with Brockton, the city of Brockton. Shaw Center is Neighborhood Health Center and the Board of Health and BEMA, Brockton Emergency Management. And without our friends in Plymouth County with the Federal CARES Act, we wouldn't even have been in that building. We spent about $1 million in the CARES Act funds to be able to get that up to speed. It had been offline for years. So, and then yesterday we had AG Maura Healy here, and she was with the delegation early and with me in the afternoon, and just going around. And where I went was Trinity Baptist Church with her to look at the learning pods and the food pantries. So it's all hands on deck. We need to continue to educate and inform folks that the vaccine will save lives. I know there's some hesitancy, so there's education and outreach to our diversity in the beautiful community known as Brockton. But we will get there. I just did an interview with Bloomberg, and I said, worst part of my job is 4 o'clock when I get the death count and sick count. And I yearn for the day when they call me and say, Mayor, there's nothing, it's zero today. Nobody lost their lives and nobody's sick. So not there yet, but we're heading in the right direction, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks so much for that update. And, someone brought up in the chat about Marvin Hagler, and absolutely, I know you were part of that interview and had some great words in testament to his true championship nature, not just as a boxer, but as a human being and somebody who mentored and helped a lot of people along the way. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tragedy. 66 sudden loss is just tragic. And his mom called me the other day. His brother, Rockin' Robbie, great middleweight himself, is still in the city. And, in due time, we will honor the champ. He'll be forever a boxer. City of Champions, in essence, is because of Hagler and Marciano. They were key components to that. And, I want to thank the governor for declaring Marvin's birthday, May 23rd, where he would have been 67, as Marvelous Marvin Hagler Day in the Commonwealth. And fitting tribute. And locally in the City of Champs, we will come together with our public and private partners to figure out a fitting tribute for Marvelous Marvin. But he was the best all-time middleweight champ, and he did beat Sugar Ray Leonard, no doubt about that.
Agreed. Thank you, Mayor. We're going to now pivot to Rich Hines, our chair-elect and past chair of the Government Affairs. As I mentioned, the congressman got called into session, but he was great this morning, reached out to us and recorded not only an opening, but he answered 3 questions, and he promised to be here if he can, April 9th, or another date coming up. So he really felt sad about that. It's my pleasure now to introduce Rich Hines. He's president and CEO of Barber Corporation, which has been here for more than 125 years in the city. Barber Corporation is a family-owned and operated shoe and plastics company with its headquarters here in Brockton, but also has an Atlanta facility where they expanded a number of years ago. They have an employee base approaching 100 strong, and Rich Hines grew up in Brockton, maintains his deep ties to the city and the region, lives locally, and is very active, obviously, with the Chamber of Commerce, but also the Rotary Club. Every week he's there, and with the Old Colony YMCA Board of Directors. So, Rich, thanks for being here today. And
well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to abridge my opening remarks, my introduction, in light of the fact that the congressman is not here live. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Congressman Keating is a senior member of the Massachusetts Congressional Delegation. He's the only native son of this region serving in Congress, having been born and raised nearby in Sharon, Mass, where he graduated from Sharon High School, went to Boston College and Suffolk University Law School. He continues to serve on the board of the Sharon Crescent United Credit Union, serving the entire Metro South region. His district includes communities in Metro South, South Shore, South Coast, Cape Cod, and on the islands as well. He currently serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee, where he is the chairman of the Europe, Energy, Environment, and Cyber Subcommittees. And he's also on the Armed Services Committee as well. As a leading expert on European affairs in Congress, he has long worked to move U.S. interests forward, including local business interests, most notably seen in his successful efforts to exempt our cranberry crops from retaliatory European tariffs. And with that, I think we'll have Lexi roll the opening introductory remarks that Congressman Keating has recorded for us.
Thank you for the chance of having some remarks today with a great asset to our office and to all of us, Bob Nelson, who's there with Small Business Administration. And it's great to be here with Mayor Sullivan as well as the Chamber. There's so much going on, and we're trying to juggle this between roll call votes and logistics of moving around here. But there's a lot of moving around going on in the economic front with the American Rescue Plan. I just want to touch base in my remarks briefly on some of them. And the theory behind the approach to the CARES Act in this is an important thing to understand. First of all, I wasn't around, but in 2008, when we had the financial crisis that affected our country and we had stimulus bills that went forward, there were failures in those approaches. And we've learned from those failures. So the biggest one is that despite throwing money at the problem, small businesses had an enormous burden of trying to reconnect with their employers and the employees, putting them together again. And that resulted in such a slow, reset from our financial problems that affect us at that time. Some businesses took so long to get together, to find new workers, to reconnect with their old workers. Some businesses shuttered in that process and never reopened. So the philosophy behind much of what we've done is to try and keep the workers connected with their employers and their businesses. It'll do two things. It'll prevent many businesses from closing as they had before, but it'll also speed our recovery forward because there won't be that lag period where the reconnect occurs. And so this is something that really marks the CARES Act monies that we've had and the American Rescue Plan. That's why we've continued on with the Paycheck Protection Program to $7 billion. The new part of that will include the extension to nonprofits, the 501Cs, with some qualifying aspects to it. The continuation of the economic injury disaster loan for $15 billion, which was a lifeline in keeping businesses just above water during this crisis. Something I worked very hard on myself to be included. Over $28 billion to the restaurants and hospitality industry, something that in our region of Massachusetts struck us really hard. And having that targeted money there is so important, as well as within that money, another $5 billion geared at the smaller restaurants. So this is really getting down to the smallest of the small businesses that were in so much jeopardy. There were also continuations, important continuations on unemployment till September 6th, on paid family leave and sick leave, on subsidizing COBRA, and expanding the employee retention tax credit. And importantly in this, that wasn't in the other plans, was by Mass Municipal's guess or estimate, $2 billion to our cities and towns in Massachusetts that are just so important. Higher education money for our universities and colleges were there. And I know just recently, although it's not part of the plan, that the Chamber supported DACA. And that occurred just this week as we advanced it into the House. All this would matter if we don't deal with the virus itself. So it's important to emphasize that the American Rescue Plan continued our effort at research, because with the variants, we'll need boosters. It appears more than likely. And also to make sure the testing is accessible, and maybe high-speed testing could be something that could be very important to schools, to businesses, and to all of us to be able to get that instant test result back. So these are all things that we have going forward. I look forward to the summer. Like so many of you, I think that the prospects are great with the expansion of vaccines, continued common sense around distancing and mask wearing. I think we're going to have as close to normal as we probably could going into this summer. Let's hope and pray for. And as a closing statement in this portion, I hope all of you are well. I, like so many of you, have lost friends to this pandemic, and one as recently just a few days ago. So all of us hopes that we all stay well, We get through this together. And from an economic standpoint, we're going to see us come out of this so much quicker and more effectively than we had in 2008, and look forward to the recovery plan, which will emphasize infrastructure that's just a few months away.
Okay, thank you, Congressman. And as Chris mentioned, we posed 3 questions to the Congressman ahead of time, and he answered by video. And I'm going to just read the first question. And it actually relates to the last thing that the Congressman mentioned. That is the topic of infrastructure spending. The U.S. Chamber and the Metro South Chamber would like to see Congress act on a spending bond plan to provide much needed updates and advances to U.S. infrastructure, including water, sewer, roads, and bridges. What are the chances of such a bill will pass this summer? Lexi?
The chances of a recovery bill that'll center on infrastructure spending are extremely high. I'd say it's almost certain, and it's likely to take place as early as this summer. It's important to note, too, that the scope of that will be the issue. We're working very hard, and we're working under the assumption now that there's community funding projects that used to be called earmarking. Those aspects may indeed bring further bipartisan support to the effort. We're hoping that that's the case. So we're going under the presumption that it'll be a bipartisan bill. I hope that that's the case because we'll be able to go further and stronger in our approach to an infrastructure that's been rated by the American Society of Civil Engineers as C- at best. So the need is there. The difference in a bipartisan effort versus my statement that it's almost certain revolves around the reconciliation process. It's almost certain because we have another opportunity to use the reconciliation process again this year because this is our second budget. And but that's limited, I think, as we saw with the first one. And that'll reduce the ability for us to deal with all infrastructure issues. It'll reduce the scope and the spending of that as well. It'll limit what we can do. So our hope is that we're going to do it in a bipartisan way, which would be more robust, but definitely be able to deal with it. We have so many needs in our area, the Cape Cod bridges, our overall roads and bridges, but we're going to see a bill that's very forward thinking. It's going to be competitive globally. It's going to be very green. It's going to deal with broadband expansion and a lot of wireless issues that are there, the new industries that come into play. So this will happen. I'm quite certain. The question will be, what's the scope?
Okay, thank you once again, Congressman. Next topic is immigration. U.S. companies are clamoring for workers these days. Skilled, educated, and general laborers are all in high demand. Your thoughts on getting Congress to act on a pathway to citizenship legislation?
Issues surrounding immigration have already been addressed. The prohibition that President Trump had put on for H-1B visas, the highly skilled workers, that prohibition was revoked by President Biden already, and the process is back in place. It's a very competitive and limited process, but it's back in place. Also, on just in a period of another few days, March 31st, you're going to see the prohibition expire on H-2B visas, J-1 visas. That's important too for our district because that's a vital part of our hospitality industry in particular, and our seasonal industry. So we're working on that. We're working on the fact that with the H-2B visas that they could be expanded beyond the cap that happened when there was excess demand rather routinely under President Bush and President Obama. I think we'll go back to that. with President Biden, and that's important for our region as well. On the overall issue of immigration, just this week, we passed the American Dream and Promise Act, which deals with the DACA recipients, people who are there, and that's a strong step forward. And we also dealt with immigration issues surrounding farmers and agricultural interests in that way, with a pathway to citizenship. So those two pieces, they were broken apart because there was a feeling that there was a greater opportunity for support in the Senate, moving those forward in pieces, the way that's addressed, because there's greater support for that. We'll see as it goes to the Senate. I know the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, a lot of business groups, farm groups, and other groups are going to be pushing hard for these two pieces of legislation to get through. And I hope that we can begin to address in a more comprehensive fashion a pathway to citizenship, that is akin to what happened many years ago in the Senate with John McCain and Ted Kennedy, where they passed in a huge bipartisan measure the ability for comprehensive immigration reform. I think we have the ability to do that in the House side. That could be more difficult, given some of the polarization around this issue in the Senate side. But again, a lot of business groups, and particularly the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, may well be able to move some of the Republican senators forward on that.
Thank you once again, Congressman. And the final topic involves expansion of SBA-related resources to jumpstart a new generation of young entrepreneurs and small business owners in the wake of the pandemic. What are the next steps, as you see it, in meeting the needs of creating new business owners?
When we look forward, and it's a great question to be able to look forward like this at the new generation of entrepreneurs and business people, it's important to look at the future. I mentioned in terms of the infrastructure plan that is forward thinking, that it's going to deal with expansion of broadband. It's going to deal with that type of infrastructure. It's going to deal with creating new jobs in new areas. The green industry, the blue being the marine industry. I've got legislation for job training and education, and we're going to move forward with offshore wind. That's going to be a linchpin for the whole United States, to be the first major commercial project. And there's spin-off jobs that are going to surround that. There's all kinds of research and grants I've been able to get in our region for underwater, activity and businesses going forward. The linchpin again in the marine area between the Navy and our defense and the private sector. It's going to benefit both. So I'd say the biggest area, the one area where there'll be the greatest opportunity and expansion, actually might spring from the pandemic itself. Amazingly, at the height of the pandemic, when we were crushed so much by this, we saw an increase of 77%, of $82.5 billion in the businesses that surround online businesses. This is exploding. Telemedicine, all the online businesses that are springing from the pandemic. And there's going to be great opportunities for a lot of young, educated entrepreneurs in that area. So I look for great opportunities for new businesses, not just new entrepreneurs for the old businesses, but new entrepreneurs for the new business sectors, the green sectors, the marine, the blue sectors, which are going to increase 25% higher in terms of the rate of increase than the typical economy. That's what that's forecast. And for what the new industries that have just spawned from the pandemic. So I think I look at great opportunity for the creation of new businesses, new sectors, and new entrepreneurs.
Thank you again. That was very enlightening. As Chris mentioned earlier, anyone that's on the call that would like to submit questions, you can do so. They will be saved and answered by the congressman at a future date. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate that. And I want to thank David and Chris from the congressman's staff who assisted Lexi and I in getting those questions answered. As you can see, it was pretty flawless. If you were just tuning in, you'd think he was live. I want to now introduce us on a great segue, Bob Nelson from the Sba office here in Massachusetts. Bob and Eli work closely together in supporting small businesses here in Massachusetts. They're leaders amongst the nation in terms of percentage loans and EIDL access here in the state. And you can imagine how hard they've been working and how effective they've been and helping, working with us to help get the word out about these resources. It's just extraordinary as I scroll through by town list of the number of businesses in our region that have accessed one or more, most times more than one, and sometimes three different resources from the federal government as small businesses dealing with this pandemic and the challenges that it presented. So we're delighted to have you here, Bob, and welcome. What can you tell us that's new with this latest stimulus? And I don't know if you have any reaction to the congressman's comments.
Sure. Well, thank you, Chris. And we appreciate your partnership and support tremendously. You've been a strong partner of the SBA for many, many years now. So, but to the local elected officials that are on, and certainly wonderful to hear from Mayor Sullivan. You know, it's just great for me to personally be with you. And as you mentioned, I'm joined by Eli Spayu. Eli is the Assistant District Director of Lender Relations here in Massachusetts. And as you'll hear me talk about some of the numbers and the things that we've been working on, we really have been hitting it out of the park and doing some tremendous work. But it's not just the SBA staff, it really is the community partners, chamber organizations like yours, Chris, but our lenders who are all coming together to try to help small businesses with access so that they know about the programs, know how to do the application so that they can get these dollars so that they can continue on with their recovery. But the first thing that I wanted to share is, the Sba Administrator was confirmed on March 16th. So the new administrator is Isabel Guzman. She was formerly the Deputy Chief of Staff of the SBA under the Obama administration. So obviously a Latina and a woman. So great to have her leading the SBA. And I think that you'll see some major announcements from her in the coming days. But looking forward to working with her in order to continue to deliver programs and capital to small businesses. But the first slide here, as far as our PPP activity, when you think of this, so this most recent round of PPP, it just started in January, and you're talking over $5 billion in approvals, over 55,000 loans. This is just Massachusetts. So this is huge. It is really significant. And, what I do is I measure the Massachusetts percentage of the national population to what we're doing in PPP versus the national totals. And certainly we're trending over where we would be. So we have good activity. When you look at what we've done here in Massachusetts last week alone, over 5,000 new approvals for over $375 million. This is good news. And so I know one of the things that is on top of mind for folks is the deadline right now for PPP is March 31st. But I want you all to know that the House did pass a PPP extension, taking it out to May 31st. While it's not official and it's not across the finish line, I think folks can anticipate there being an extension to the PPP deadline. There was new PPP money in the American Rescue Plan, and we know that there have been recent changes for Schedule C filers, so they're relatively early with the most recent changes. So again, just wanted to put it out there that we do anticipate anticipate, the House has approved an extension to May 31st. But forgiveness is certainly on top of mind for a lot of folks. And so right now, there have been 2 million loans that have been forgiven. What we know is that 99.1% of the loans that have gone through the forgiveness process have been 100% forgiveness. And that is the ultimate goal. That is what we want at the SBA. And this is what I think small businesses want, is they don't want this to end up as a loan and that they're going to have to pay, even though it is 1% for 5 years and very attractive. The ultimate goal is to get this loan 100% forgiven. And so, but certainly pleased that we have 2 million that have gone through the process. There's still a lot, 2.9 million need to go through the process under the first 2 rounds of PPP that we did prior to August 8th. But I did want you to know that we are making strong progress. So the next thing I'll share, and I'm not sure whether Eli got bumped off with the slides, but I'll just keep going. So I want to talk about the Schedule C changes for that the Biden-Harris administration announced, and so this is a major change. So as far as so we're talking about Schedule C filers, self-employed, 1099 independent contractors, single member LLCs, so the rules recently changed to allow them to use the gross income rather than the net income when they're calculating their maximum loan amount. And so I don't have to tell you, a lot of these small businesses, they were previously showing a loss on their Schedule C. And if they had a loss, they were not eligible for a PPP. But with the recent changes, we're allowing them to go off of the top line, the gross income. So it's going to make more small businesses eligible for PPP dollars and for higher loan amounts. So in simple terms, when you're looking at a single person business, the PPP loan, for the most part, it's owner compensation replacement. And so it's relatively easy for the small business to get the PPP. They use the money to pay themselves. As far as the owner compensation replacement, because it is so simple, it has extremely strong likelihood of being 100% forgiven. And also there are streamlined processes for loans under 50,000 when they're going through the forgiveness process. But so this is a big change, and we've been working hard to try to make sure that small businesses know about the changes on Schedule C filers. The important thing that folks need to know is that it is not retroactive. So, but if a business applied for the PPP and they got an approval from the bank, and if the bank reported the loan to the SBA on what is called a 1502 report, it can't be changed. So this is not retroactive, but if the lender has not reported it to the SBA through the 1502 report, the loan can be withdrawn or canceled, and the small business to do a new application based upon the new rules in order to get the higher potential loan amounts. But we have up here the slide, or we previously did, as far as the changes with the new legislation, the American Rescue Plan, and so there's a lot of dollars in here. So as far as increased eligibility for PPP, I think it made all nonprofits eligible except for 501c4s. The big thing in this legislation is for restaurants and bars, food services businesses, where there's going to be a new grant program of $28.6 billion. SBA will be standing this up. So applications are not available yet. It will take SBA some time in order to stand up this new grant opportunity. But I know that restaurants and bars and food services businesses, they've been extremely hard hit. So these dollars, as the congressman mentioned, this is a critical segment of the economy, certainly here in the congressman's district. So I know there's going to be tremendous interest in that new grant opportunity. I will share, so similar to the shuttered venue operator grant program, which will get to in a little bit. This is a grant program. All government grants entities have to have a current registration in the System for Award Management. So it goes by www.sam.gov. So if there are entities that are going to be interested in this new restaurant grant, they might want to get their registration current and active in the System for Award Management, because it is going to be a requirement for government grants. It does not happen overnight, so it does take a little bit of time. So entities should, the best advice that we have is prepare, get your registration in SAM current and active. But the shuttered venue operator grant, and so Chris, there was just breaking news, within the last hour or two, where SBA has announced the grant application open period. So that is going to happen on April 8th. I know that these entities also an extremely hard hit segment. So you're talking about movie theaters, live stages, museums, zoos. There are so many of these entities that have been totally shut since March. And so the SVOG, which we call it, the grant application period will open up on April 8th. There will be a national information call that will take place, and we'll get you this information, Chris, so that you can put it out to your members and the folks who are on this call. There'll be a national information call on the 30th at 2:30 in the afternoon till 4 o'clock. But folks who are interested in the SVOG, you're going to want to dial in for that information call. But one big change with the legislation that was recently passed by approved by the president, we have previously been saying that you could not apply for a PPP and also apply for the SVOG. The most recent legislation changed that. And so entities can now apply for the PPP. They can also apply for the SVOG. The order is extremely important. They need to get the PPP first. So for entities that are out there, consider getting an application in for PPP in order to hedge your bets. There's going to be a lot of interest in the SVOG grant program. If an entity does get the PPP and also gets approved for the SVOG, SBA will be deducting the PPP amount from the SVOG award. We know that the SVOG awards will be larger than the PPP. But the small business, would end up with additional money in order to help with their recovery through the SVOG. But this is a big change. So this is a 180 from what we've been saying for several months now. And so definitely want to make sure that folks know about this change, that it no longer is an eligibility disqualifier that they apply for the PPP and also go for the SVOG. But the targeted idle advances, I absolutely want to talk about this. So for those that previously applied for the SBA's economic injury disaster loan, so that's different than the PPP. Want to make sure that people know that you can't get a second idle loan. So it's not like PPP where you can get a second draw. So, but for entities that previously have not applied and obtained an idle loan, we're still accepting economic injury disaster loan applications, and they can apply at sba.gov/disaster. But we were previously doing advanced grants. They were being calculated at $1,000 per employee up to $10,000 max. Under the targeted idle advance, which we received appropriations for through the previous legislation, the legislation is intended to balance out so that entities can get the full 10,000. So if they got 1,000 previously, they'd be eligible to potentially get 9,000 of additional grant dollars. They do need to be located in a low-income community, and they have to have a 30% economic loss in order to be eligible for that targeted idle advance. The second priority would be for entities that applied, but previously did not get any money because we ran out of money last July. And so those entities would be eligible for a $10,000 advance. But again, they need to be in a low-income community and to have suffered a 30% economic loss. There is a mapping tool on SBA's website that folks can visit if they want to see whether their business is in what is designated a low-income community, and you would be eligible for the targeted idle advance. But under this new legislation, we got $15 billion of additional money. We're going to be doing supplemental targeted idle advances. This would be for the hardest hit and the smallest of the small businesses. So if they have 10 or fewer employees, if they've suffered a 50% economic loss, they're going to be eligible for an additional $5,000 on top of the $10,000. So these are grant dollars. They don't have to be repaid. Small businesses don't need to do anything. SBA is inviting businesses that are potentially eligible to come into the portal to make an application for the targeted idle advance. I was on a call earlier today. I believe we've sent out email invites to everyone that we know of that is potentially eligible based upon location. And we're encouraging them to go into the portal to make the application. We are not currently doing the applications for this supplemental targeted idle advance, but assume that it's going to follow the same pattern where SBA would be sending out an invite for entities to come in to apply for that additional $5,000. But the last thing, as far as this appropriations, there's money out there for what's called the Community Navigator program. And so SBA, we know that, we're a small, mighty team here in Massachusetts and across the country, but it's only through our formal resource partners, the small business development centers, our SCORE organization, our Women's Center, that we're able to do what we do. But this Community Navigator program, there's going to be grant dollars for entities. And again, this is brand new, so we're not accepting applications yet on this, but there's 175 million here. And it's always my goal to try to get as many federal dollars here into the Commonwealth as possible. But we know that these community partners of ours are really important to try to reach the hardest hit, our underserved folks who have, second language is their primary method of communicating, reaching rural markets. So stay tuned with us for more information on the Community Navigator program. But as far as everything else, the congressman talked about his last question and his answer as far as what is in store down the road. And what we're hearing and talking to our partners, Chris, is that they have seen a real strong uptick in clients visiting them, looking to start and to launch new businesses. And, new businesses are the job creators. We know that. And, I think that when you look at where we are with the Massachusetts reopening, with where we're getting on vaccinations, I think folks are feeling a little bit more confident, a little bit more hopeful. Everyone has had a dream about entrepreneurship and starting a small business. And so, I think you're going to see a lot more activity on this front. One of the other things that historically we've always seen is when there's periods of high unemployment, that people always look to entrepreneurship. And, with COVID, a lot of people have been at home, they've had time to think about where they want to go with their life, what they want to do. And, possibly, launching a business, their dream that they've had for years, but, they've been wrapped up with their full-time job and haven't had the time in order to explore it and work on a business plan, to talk to advisors. I know a lot of folks are doing that, but I'll just wrap up quickly, Chris, and that's the enhancements to SBA's loan programs. And so we've increased the guarantee on SBA's loans, on most of our loans, up to the full 90%. The fees have been eliminated. That's on our regular guarantee program, on our 504 program. What we call the CARES Act payments. So that's the program where SBA is actually making the payments on borrowers' loans for new borrowers that get approved after February 1st. SBA will be making 3 months worth of payments on their loans. We're not talking about a deferment. We're talking about the government actually making the principal and interest payments on those loans. So the timing is really good. So for new businesses that get SBA funding, not only is the lender getting a higher guarantee from us, the small business is not going to be charged any fees. And SBA will be making 3 months worth of payments capped at $9,000 a month per loan. So there are wonderful opportunities with the SBA programs and our resources. And, we look to continue to partner with you, Chris, and all the folks who are part of this call in order to help deliver. But the CARES Act payments, this is another area where small businesses don't need to do anything. Our lenders report the loans that are eligible to receive these payments for existing SBA loans. Depending on when they were approved and fully funded, they're eligible for additional payments by the SBA. Again, small businesses don't need to do anything. The SBA and the lenders are taking care of this. But again, my message really is on these new businesses that are thinking about starting. If they get an SBA loan approved after February 1st, SBA is going to pay 3 months worth of payments. So I'll end there, Chris, but looking forward to answering any questions. I'm glad that we have Eli on. So if there are any hard ones, they go to him, but always a pleasure to be with you, Chris.
Thank you, Bob Nelson. Appreciate all you're doing for small businesses, and thank you for being here. We'd like to have you back at some point to get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty as things evolve, as the new SBA director nationwide comes on board, and she has additional information. I know you mentioned earlier today there might be some more announcements and whatnot, so we look forward to maybe having you back. And of course, Eli's been a great asset, and we're really fortunate to have him with us every week of the last 50 weeks, helping us. There was one question and one issue, and it's not to you, but it's something we're going to bring up with the congressman. It has to do with the American Recovery Act funding by community. Brockton is towards the end of the list, the lower end of the list, because of our housing stock. Many of our homes were created by the Campanellis back in the 70s, and as a result, it skewers the numbers to make it look like we have a lot newer housing stock. So our CDBG funds get impacted, and now this is impacted because it's tied to that same schedule. So we're going to really make a push, I think, along with the mayor and others in the city, councilors like Moses Rodriguez and others, to really get the attention of the federal government to say this has got to be factored in a little bit different way, because even though we have newer houses, they're ranches, and now they're 40 years old, 50 years old. And they're counting against us as new homes, but they're actually in some of them disrepair and are not the same as like Newton and Cambridge are ahead of us. Lowell, Fall River, New Bedford all receive much more money than Brockton. And so that's something that we're going to bring up with the congressman. Again, Bob, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. I want to move quickly to our Mass Office of Business Development folks. I don't know, and Mike Brady. Senator, why don't I hand it over to you for quickly, and then Mass Office of Business Development give us an update from the Secretary of Economic Development and Labor as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to Mr. Bob Nelson and Rick Hines on the information. We are taking up, and we passed legislation recently in the State House and Senate to convey what the federal government has done with the PP loan forgiveness, and also it also Massachusetts corporate excise tax, from the tax on that. We also did, following the guidance of the recent Federal American Rescue Plan Act, the bill also excludes up to $10,200 of income received from unemployment benefits from taxation for individuals making less than 200% of the federal poverty line. The federal government did a little bit better, but we got to stay within our budget means, so we were able to forgive up to $10,200 of that. And we are also passing the extension deadline on filing your taxes, similar to what the federal government did to help out. And
so that'll be May 15th, right, Senator?
Yeah. In the PPE loan forgiveness, that's huge. And we've got some other money. Mass Housing has a lot of money that potentially can come into our area as well, and I'm working with them constantly. The other thing, it was great news that Brockton is getting their chunk of change, but I'm also working with Congressman Keating for these towns that I represent, that he represents in my Southeast South Shore district as well. So we are kind of copying what the federal government has done to best of our ability. And thank goodness to our federal delegation. I'm in constant contact with Congressman Keating or his office and Congressman Lynch, who represents Brockton. But also I'm going to be meeting next week with Senator Warren's new liaison for the South Shore, because the other person she had working for has moved into another position. So we've got a meeting coming up with them next week. And it was good news that the governor was in town. And I want to give extended kudos to Sue Joss. I mean, she's done a yeoman of work getting these vaccines to our city of Brockton, but we also are trying to work out to the South Shore District, because every other week it's been a trial and error sometimes getting these vaccines to the South Shore, and we got to make sure we take care of these towns as well. I did get a report from Mass DPH this week. Every town in Southeastern Massachusetts is moving in the right direction, but Hanson just went up to the red recently, and the town of Plymouth did. So, you know, as good as things get, we got to keep our eye on the ball with everything and make sure we're protecting our constituents. But thank you to everybody who's on the line. And I am now chairman of public service, and I'm also vice chairman of economic development, and I serve in the Veterans Committee. So with economic development, this is a big thing that's come up for the past several years with the sports betting and all of that. And this is a way to get revenue into the Commonwealth. The states around us have already approved it. And I'm on the committee to try to get that moving for our Commonwealth, because we're losing. It's all Massachusetts people that are going out of state to place their bets and spend their money. And the money goes back to the communities from which the money is spent. So we need to get that moving in Massachusetts, because that's another way to get revenue into the Commonwealth. And I'm not good with technology, but everybody under 50, that's all they're doing. They even bet on how many touchdown passes Tom Brady got this year. Even though he worked for Tampa Bay, he's still well loved in the community. And there's so much revenue that we can retain in the Commonwealth. So that's big news. And I think that talking with the leadership in the Senate, we will get something done this year.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Senator. We appreciate you being with us and a friend of the chamber. So I want to jump right to Susan and Margaret, just for a quick update. And thank you for your 50 weeks of participation in these. So.
Well, we appreciate it. I'll be representing both of us today. As you know, you have impeccable timing as you get to follow Secretary Keneally's business call updates every other week now. So this week we talked about, and it's been much covered in the media, that March 22nd, the Commonwealth is going to move into phase 4, step 1. What does that mean? As far as business sectors able to now open, indoor and outdoor stadiums, arenas, and ballparks will be able to open at 12% capacity, and they need to submit a safety plan to the Commonwealth before they are good to open. So that's coming online. We're going to be able to start having dance floors at events, which is, I know many weddings I have roll over from last year to this year are looking forward to. The kids have really endured much this year, but overnight summer camps are going to be allowed to operate this summer, and exhibition and convention centers are going to start coming online. We do have an update to our gathering limits, and it's 100 people for indoors and 150 outdoors. Those are for public settings and paid venues. Your backyard parties are limited at private residences to 10 indoor and 25 outdoor. So we do have those limits in place, and I think we're starting to see some new normal with these restrictions being loosened. I've talked a lot on these calls about the Mass Growth Capital Grant Program, and to date, we've awarded over $630 million to over 14,000 businesses, and of which those 5,000 were women or minority owned, and 3,700 of them have been restaurants. So really putting that small business, those are up to 75,000. I know I've talked to a lot of calls, follow-up calls on this, and it's great to start seeing some of the successes that the help is getting into their hands. So they are still curing applications and rolling out additional awards. Secretary did talk about some additional funding programs that we're going to be releasing through our Partnerships for Recovery Economic Development Bill, one of which I thought would be applicable to Brockton in particular. And I did see in our participants list, we had Sheila Sullivan Jardim of the Mass Hire Workforce Board for Brockton. And that's the Rapid Reemployment Program. It's going to be for employers and the workforce boards and some of the nonprofits to partner on building skills in the labor market. And they're targeting healthcare, IT, financial services, and transportation. So that grant program is underway now. And as well as on Monday, we'll have some RFPs for small business technical assistance providers, as well as funding for the CDFIs and CDCs, get us to replenish the loan funds, the loan reserves, and some new programs there as well. So Sue and I always have Brockton front as mind, and appreciate, Chris, your leadership in getting these great resources together. So thank you.
And thank you, Margaret. I want to put you on the spot and find out if we received the grant. And I think they got to let us know Monday and Tuesday. Just wink if we got it. Otherwise, I'll understand. Okay.
You're one of our faves, Cooney.
All right,
You know
thank
it.
you. I appreciate that. The Chamber has put in for another grant to redo our website and to update some of our marketing promotions for the city and the region. So thank you. Hopefully that will come through. Thank you all for being here. We like to start on time and end on time. And we appreciate your flexibility and your understanding and the Congressman not being able to be here. He's going to try to be here on our next scheduled call, which is April 9th. And I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we're talking with the governor folks. They're supposed to confirm on April 1st for the governor, April 30th on that call. He's planning on being with us, right now. We'll see how that all works and whether he can confirm it on April 1st, but we're working hard towards that. If you recall, it was a year ago, he was scheduled to be with us. We had an event planned. He then pushed that back until October. He then had to reschedule again. So he really owes us and he wants to do this. So hopefully we can accommodate him on March 30th. We're also working on Congressman Auchincloss, who's the new congressman, took the place of Kennedy. We always have an invitation out to Congressman Lynch. He's been more difficult to schedule, probably because of senior leadership role. But there are others that we have planned for you too. Our Small Business Awards are coming up in May. Our Athena Awards in June. So we've got a lot of great programs coming up with some great sponsorship. Want to thank you all for participating and your support of the Chamber. Rich Hines, thank you very much for being the chair-elect and introducing our speaker today. Hope you have a very nice weekend. The weather's supposed to be pretty good. And first day of spring is here. So longer days and warmer days are ahead. Have a good day. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.